Hello, and welcome to That's So For Real. We're your co-hosts,
Samantha
and Logan. On today's episode of
That's So For Real,
we will be comparing and contrasting
F. Scott Fitzgerald versus
Emily Dickinson.
I would like to take this time to thank Celsius for getting me through not only this paper, but this whole school year.
And a thank you from our next sponsor, Bojangles, because in my life, it's always bow time. We would now like to thank our live audience. We do not have a clap sign. To get into our first point. Okay, Bojangles break! For reference, this was filmed literally 2 minutes into the podcast.
Everybody watches Logan's about to shove a whole bow round into her mouth.
Snapchat did not exist when either of these people were living. However, if they were, I think that Emily Dickinson would be really into Snapchat because I think that she would be able to talk to people but not have to leave her house. And it was very similar to how she forced people to talk to her through a door.
I saw this thing that was like, so the equivalent to Jay Gatsby, like doing all these parties for Daisy and looking at the green light, is posting something on your Snapchat story or making a private story just for a specific person to see it.
And I think that Emily Dickinson mailing her one true love, aka her brother's wife, all of the love letters, even though they were already married. Yes, I did find that out at 11 p.m. the night the paper was due. Jump scare warning. Don't look up, was Emily Dickinson gay? Because there's a jump scare of a sentence. Hang on, let's read it.
No, I didn't.
Lack of adequate emotional relationship with both parents in her early childhood placed the poet in an essentially bisexual position. That seems to have resolved itself into homosexual inclinations from her youth into the late years when her love began to turn toward Judge Otis Lord. Emily Dickinson was bisexual. You heard it here first, folks.
But, like, Logan was reading me some of her poetry yesterday.
Not my poetry, Emily Dickinson's.
Yeah, she was in love with this girl named Susie.
She wanted to turn into a man for her so that they could be public.
I think she wanted to be a man.
Hey guys, we jumped around a lot, but this is me talking about how Emily Dickinson was very secluded. Wow. However, one second, let me pull up a point in my paper that does document this.
Miss Wright is making fun of us.
In her 1,052nd poem, she writes, "I never saw a moor. I never saw the sea. Yet I know how the heather looks, and what a billow be."
Heather.
So, turns out she has never seen the ocean. And,
she literally lives on a coastal state.
I think what she is trying to say here is that she has never left her home.
I think what she's saying is she needs help.
I think she's saying, like, the whole point of this poem is, like, some things are just obvious.
Right.
And in this sense, I think it's obvious that she's a bisexual.
And in this sense, I think it's obvious that she's a bisexual.
Which I find that, like, she had so much drama in her love life without even leaving her house.
Yeah, so imagine if she did leave her house. Like, she definitely would have been a Daisy, for sure.
Like, Daisy...
Daisy is Emily Dickinson if she left her house. And Jay Gatsby is her Susan.
Guys.
See, I told you if I gap long enough, we'll come up with
just had, like, an epiphany.
Okay, back to the reality. Quick break to talk about how much me and Samhantha hate Nick, because, you know.
Okay, let's take a break to talk about F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing of Nick. Why don't I have a psychotic breakdown while writing this? Well, not yet. Not yet, because the book was published in 1924. Ooh, hot take, she didn't have a psychotic breakdown. For real, Nick is his wife. Having a psychotic breakdown. No, because she never had a breakdown yet. No, that's what I'm saying. She read this book, and that's she had a psychotic breakdown. That's a valid answer. And she, like, they diagnosed her with exhaustion first, and isn't that literally what Nick had?
So, update, our live audience has passed. Not away. they've gone away. Pro tip, don't drop your whole mic.
Logan, are you breaking
Just like
down?
Zelda.
Zelda did have a breakdown. Zelda had a schizophrenic break.
Similar to some people I know.
I think I'm about to have a schizophrenic break.
Unfortunately, she didn't have a schizophrenic break. We just took another Bojangles break instead.
Okay. So, again, like I've mentioned like 50 times now, his wife's name is
Zelda.
And
Not to be confused with The Legend of Zelda, I
isn't
think.
that the Legend of Zorro?
So, turns out they're two different things. This is what I was talking about. It's a video game. And this is what Samantha was talking about. I've never heard of it, so ignore me pretending like I know what she's talking about in the next clip. Yes, that. Okay.
I have like a vivid memory of watching these
Not a
shows
hot
when
take.
I was like sick when I was little. Okay.
Why did you choose that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, and then his first, like, the girlfriend that he, like, had, or I don't even think they actually dated, but the girl that he was, like, in love with when he went to Princeton, her name was, like, Genevieve or something. No, it was Geneva. Yeah, Geneva. It was, like,
I would like to pop
What
in
is
here
that?
and say, parallel from Samantha's point of F. Scott Fitzgerald equals Jay Gatsby. Jay Gatsby didn't love any other women. In fact, he said that he didn't even look at women until Daisy was there.
yes.
Just wanted to pop in and give some facts about the book.
Yeah, because I think, really, Zelda is the only girl that he, like, dated, and obviously he, like, married her. But
Not
she
on the
was
first
just-
try.
She was, yes. He was just kind of, like, he had a little bit of a crush on, I guess, this Geneva girl. But then after his wife died, she didn't die, like, of it. She was actually in a mental hospital in North Carolina, and it burned down, and she died in the fire.
Yay, North Carolina!
Yeah, so she died in a fire.
Someone
tragedy.
definitely set a fire to that on purpose.
Okay, anyway. So after that, he, like, continued to be an alcoholic, and he became, like, a film writer, and he fell in love with a woman named Sheila. The next point in my paper literally goes from Fitzgerald fell in love with a woman named Sheila Graham during this time. He began to write again. Unfortunately, just like his character Jay Gatsby, Fitzgerald died thinking that he left no lasting mark on the world. So,
Tough way to die.
tough luck.
Now, I would like to pop in here and, again,
You've
compare
popped
and
in a lot.
contrast. As I am the only
Yeah.
other person sitting here. Yes, that is correct. Similar to Emily Dickinson, she obviously, as we've talked about, was very alone and, like, alone a lot.
Depressed.
And depressed. And sad and alone and
Literally folklore by Taylor.
folklore by Taylor.
Swift.
Anyway,
And
point of
Evermore.
this, she got sick after her nephew's passing and never recovered and died. Actually, though, she did get sick right after her nephew passed, and then she never got better, and
Was
she
she-
died 2 years later, 3 years later.
Was she, like, in love with her nephew?
Probably. What else would be new?
She's just
Okay. Anyway, moving on. My point. My point being that Emily died thinking that no one loved her, and that also she So actually, let us dive.
She died.
let's dive
That's
into
a
this.
wild statement to make, and then just like
Well, no,
gloss over.
This is important to
Okay.
dive into because Emily Dickinson
Gotta
was
get the
very close with her
Celsius.
sister. And at one point in time, she did ask her sister to, like, once she dies or, like, passes away, please, like, just burn my poems. Like, get rid of them.
Yes.
Emily Dickinson's sister is the one that handed them over to the people that published them. Like, 3 days after Homegirl died.
Talk about betrayal. That's so for real.
And so, anyway,
Yeah.
point of this being, like, she died thinking that no one of her poems were ever going to go anywhere, and died thinking, like, the only, like, I think she had 10 that she actually published that, like, she wanted to publish, and there were literally 1,800 other poems that, like, she just thought were going to die with her, and they didn't. So, like,
right.
but, like, imagine, like, how great, like, not for them, but, like, F. Scott Fitzgerald died thinking that he was going to be, that was a failure, and, like, nothing ever came of him, and then something did, and he, like, would have loved that, because, like, maybe it would have given him a new purpose to life. But then Emily Dickinson, on the other hand, died content with being unfamous and alone and stuff like that,
Right.
and she would have, like, died if she ever became famous.
Right.
So, like, imagine, like, that's kind of a weird parallel. Like, he wanted to be famous and died thinking that he was not famous, and then he
She-
was,
Yeah.
and he would have enjoyed it, but then she died thinking that she was not famous, and then she did get famous, and she would have hated it. Like, that's
Right.
wild.
Well, because like The Great Gatsby, like the book, it was originally like a failure. His first book, let me scroll. I have it written down. This Side of Paradise was his first novel, and that was like his original success that made him like he kind of made a name for himself a little bit and became wealthy, and so that persuaded Zelda to finally marry him. Again, gold
Oh.
digger.
That actually reminds me. So, Emily Dickinson came from like a wealthy family, and so that's why she did have a house, because she obviously didn't work. So obviously she had to have money from somewhere. They were a very prominent family in Amherst, Massachusetts, and she grew up wealthy. And she basically, like, they built a house for her, and it was called the Emily Dickinson house, but it was just like part of her original house, just on the same land. And her first poem was, actually, let me get a reference. So her first poem that she ever published.
That she ever poemed?
Probably not. The first one she ever published was called, where'd it go? I just saw it. Oh, Magnum Bonum Harum Scarum. And when that's translated, it means great good of these horrors. And actually, this is really funny because this is when she was in college. It was published into the Amherst College Indicator, which it was a part of a Valentine's Day. What's it called? Edition.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it was a Valentine's Day edition. And literally, when this stuff is translated, she's literally making fun of Valentine's Day poems and like how people get all goofy near Valentine's Day and start talking like really all lovey-dovey and stuff. And I just think it's really funny because for somebody that like never goes outside, like this is obviously when she was more socialized, but
before she became depressed,
a hermit. But I just think it's funny
Recluse.
because literally like that has so much personality in it. Like if you're sitting there and literally making fun of people, like that's so funny.
Yeah. Well, and I find it weird because like I was talking about before, Fitzgerald, like his parents were unsuccessful, like he wasn't very wealthy, and like he hated all that, and like that's like a big difference between like those two authors. But he actually, like, even though again he had that first success with The Side of Paradise, him and Zelda lived most of their life like way above their means, and like they, like, when they both died, like they were in debt. They didn't actually have money, like, because again, in debt because he spent it all, and the rest of his books while he was alive were not a success. But obviously, like The Great Gatsby now, like in most schools it's required to read because it's such a big deal.
But honestly, okay, speaking of schooling, we did talk about this beforehand. So Emily Dickinson went to like it was called Amherst. It was just her local school for like elementary, high school, whatever. But then when she went to college, she went to the South Hadley Female Seminary, and she went home a year later. And it's speculated throughout a bunch of different theories, but the most popular is that she just, it wasn't popular for girls to get more than a year of education, which I think is crazy.
Wild.
Because some people are like, well, she just wanted to go home and she thought she was being oppressed. But if you look deeper into it, no girls were going for more than 1 or 2 years, and like most girls didn't have more than a year or two of college education because they needed to go home and do their duties.
Right.
Which is so vastly different from what F. Scott Fitzgerald did.
Right. Like he was able, his wealthy aunt actually paid for his schooling, because for high school, for like his secondary school education, he went to a private Catholic school, and then he was able to do all 4 years at Princeton, which obviously his parents wouldn't have been able to pay for, and his aunt did. But I find it interesting talking about, like, because when was Emily Dickinson alive?
She was alive from 1830 to 1886.
Right. Okay. So there is about a 40-year like difference where like these two things like kind of take place. However, there was still like, I mean, it was the 1920s and 30s, and so like women were still not like oh my.
Sorry.
Out of pocket things.
And Susan.
So like women were still like treated very unfairly and stuff, especially in like the workplace, because Zelda, Scott's wife, since we're using that name, Fitzgerald. Okay, anyway, his wife.
Thank you for explaining what Fitz meant. We didn't get it. Okay,
Anyway, his wife was actually like very talented, and she had like a broad amount of like jobs that she tried out. For a while, she was like a competitive like ballerina, like she danced as her job, and then she even tried writing at one point, and she did have a few novels published, but she was just never like given the credit that I think she deserved. I mean, she did kind of go insane, but like, so that could have something to do with it, but also at the same time, like, she was pushed out of just like many jobs because they were like, oh, like you're too old now, like, oh, you're not like as pretty anymore, all that. So that's a little sad how women were treated. Not the best. Maybe that drove her to insanity.
On a lighter note, I do want to bring up, I think, what's probably going to be our last point, but Emily Dickinson's poems are famous for just having, like, a whole bunch of symbols in them, like, all throughout the poems, like, very difficult to decipher, like, honestly, we probably still don't know what some of them mean because there's just so much information in all of her poems. And honestly, F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby, and it's famous for a reason. Like, it's read in classrooms for a reason because, like, there's just so much symbolism in it.
There's so much that you could, like, get out of it because when we were talking in class, like, even everybody can interpret, like, the green light for something different, like, whether it's hope or money or,
and,
like,
like,
combination.
Specifically in his book, like, it doesn't seem like it's supposed to mean one thing, and, like, English teacher stereotype, they're just diving in for no reason. Like,
right.
It seems like it's genuinely supposed to, like, make you think more, because, like, you're reading the book and you're like, oh, this definitely means something. You're not like, oh, he's wearing blue. I don't care why he's wearing blue.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my gosh. Sorry,
okay, anyway.
I keep, like, almost turning off my mic. Who knows if you can even hear me throughout this?
You definitely can.
I'm loud.
Okay, but point of this being, I think it's really impressive because, like, I was reading some of Emily Dickinson's poems, and, like, we were even reading them in class, and, like, it's just so difficult to get through all the information that's there because, like, she'll literally have a poem of 4 lines, and, like, you can talk about it for 30 minutes. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, the, like, I'm nobody, who are you?
Oh, let's actually read a segment from that because that's actually a good point.
That was, like, so good. Well, because we've talked about so much how, like, you can't assume that, like, the poet is, like, the author is the same as the narrator.
We did talk about this at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, similar to how F. Scott Fitzgerald was slightly mirrored to Jay Gatsby, where I see that Emily Dickinson mostly mirrored herself in one of her poems was the poem I'm Nobody, Who Are You? Because, no, you can't assume that, like, it is about her, but, like, you can just tell that, like, some of, like, the themes are supposed to mirror her. So it reads, I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? There's a pair of us, don't tell, they'd banish us, you know. Which, honestly, who knows if this is talking about Susan? Anyway, next stanza. How dreary to be somebody, how public like a frog, to tell your name the livelong day to an admiring bog. Which, 2 things to take out of this. 1,
Bog.
Casually comparing yourself to a frog. Like, okay.
I thought it was bog.
It is.
Frog?
No, it's like
Talia work.
Yes.
I also work with
Okay,
Talia.
what is happening? Moving on. Anyway, 2 things to pull out of this. How do you just casually compare yourself to a frog when, like, it still makes sense? And then second, this I think is interesting because she literally is saying that, like, she doesn't want to be anybody. Like, she enjoys being a nobody. And, like, I just think that's a testament to something. Because, personally...
It says something about her.
Like, I think it's just crazy because, like, I know some people are content with being introverts, but even the most introverts of introverts still talk to someone at some point. Like,
right.
But she didn't talk to anybody to the point where she, like, made people talk to her through a door.
Yeah, like, even her family, literally.
Yeah. So that's
It's wild. And again, our final closing statement. Emily didn't want to be anyone, but Fitzgerald did.
Yeah, and I think that's the main point to bring out here. We
Yeah.
figured that out during the podcast and not before.
Right.
But
No,
anyway.
we went into this with absolutely no plan. Actually, we had, like, a quick outline that we didn't use at all. We just kind of yapped.
But I think the point here is that, like, I think it's crazy that they both died thinking that they were nobody, but one of them wanted to be somebody, and one of them were content with being nobody.
And they both have very tragic lives.
Yeah, they did.
But it's okay, because we can joke about it.
Yeah, imagine your one true love marrying your brother. No thanks.
Imagining your one true love saying, I'm not going to marry you because you have no money.
Maybe that's what happened. Who knows? Anyway, that's so for real. These are our bloopers.
Some weird
Incest,
people.
bisexual, like, it's all in the
all
same realm.
thing.
Guys, Logan owes someone. Sorry, no, actually, I don't. My boss owes me money, except it's not my boss, it's my manager. So, Chris Cove, if you're reading this or seeing this, I know you played for our basketball team, but give me my $75 that I earned on Sunday. Thanks. Logan's fed up. I am, because I made 200-something bucks with that $75, and I want that $75.
Slowest opening of a can ever. On today's episode of
That's so for real.
We
I have my own mic. I don't know why we're doing this.
Okay, we
Something ain't right.